Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase pricing and availability questions regarding this watch. Omega very quietly rebooted its core diver 300-meter dive watch collection back in 2024 with a number of elements that first debuted on the 007 edition No Time to Die. So this watch right here, released in late 2024, incorporates a lot of those elements, including the return of an aluminum anodized bezel insert. We now have this bubble-like sort of plexi evocative sapphire, a no-date dial, and of course the mesh bracelet that was present on the 007 edition. That said, the size of the case does not change much. There are some dimensional variations, and I'll go over those in a moment, but it's still 42 millimeters in this instance in stainless steel, and the watch measures 14 millimeters thick, and that's where I find it's a little bit thicker than the prior variant. I think that's all down to the domed and double cambered sapphire. From lug tip to lug tip, 49.7 millimeters, it's still a 20 millimeter spacing in between the lugs. We throw it on my wrist, which is 16 centimeters in circumference. Very similar to the Bond. I have to say, all things considered, the bracelet is the best of both worlds. You get the integrity and the durability and the long-term cost savings of a bracelet, in as much as you don't have to replace straps. But it also has the flexibility of a strap rather than the rigidity that comes with a bracelet. Now, in terms of span across the wrist, I own the old 41, but the 42 is not altogether that much larger. So if you could wear the prior watch, you're going to wear this one just fine. I'd say this would wear okay on a wrist down to 15 centimeters circumference. My wrist is 16. And though it's not thin by any means, it is low enough that it should fit underneath most cuffs, including all jacket sleeves. Like I said about the bracelet, super supple. This mesh design is wonderful. There's a little bit of a taper as you move away from this vintage style straight bar junction, and then you can see in profile how these are actually made in large sheets of chainmail, and then they're cut to the size that's requested, and then they're milled along the side to remove the burrs. And it does work like a strap. As you can see, there are little individual, I wouldn't call them gussets, but let's call them O-rings that have been worked into the bracelet. And so it has the sizing capability of a strap, but with the integrity and durability of a bracelet. All of this is matte finished, which is a really nice anti-glare aesthetic. The clasp has a little bit of polished highlight. You can see there's an interesting feature in here. This is a recent addition, where there's a little clasping mechanism that features a ceramic spring-loaded pin snap so that over time the closure will remain snappy. It'll never become loose, but the idea here is that you feed the little opposite end until you get it lined up with the pin. Then you lock that down and it can't pull through by accident. That's sometimes a problem with deployant clasps on very sporty watches that may be used for vigorous activity. And you can also see how another advantage of this is that all the excess length is now underneath the clasp body and the opposite side of the bracelet, so you don't see it exposed. It is a twin trigger release, which means you need to press both triggers to pop it open. You can see Omega has reprofiled this clasp a little bit externally to match the internal mechanical change. It's a good looking piece with a judicious blend of polish and satin. If you look carefully, you can see that the logo itself is media blasted. All mechanically applied, but thoughtfully designed and well executed. Now, taking a quick look at the watch itself, you can see that it's very familiar. So we've got the little conical helium escape valve. For those of you who are saturation divers, there are very, very few of you. For the one big decompression at the end of your hours-long, days-long, or weeks-long dive, you're going to want to open this up because helium can intrude into the watch, and when the internal pressure of the helium reaches 2 to 3 bar above external, provided you've opened up this little crown, it will open the valve internally and release the helium from the inside of the watch so it doesn't blow out the seals and doesn't blow out the crystals. The watch does feature a 120 click bezel. It's very mechanical, very chunky, very pleasing. And although the knurling is still as shallow and challenging to grip as the Diver 300-meter bezel has ever been, the action itself is more precise. The click is louder, the feel is better indexed, and the touch to move it, although it's still difficult to grip, the touch to actually move it, it requires less pressure, which makes it a little bit less challenging. Of course, we do now have that anodized aluminum insert one more time after a few years of ceramic, and really a decade plus of ceramic, I have to say. I'm also going to say that I like this look better. taking a quick glance at it in the dark, you could see it is fully luminescent, which makes it quite different from the bezel pearl only luminescence that we saw on the long ago generation of aluminum bezel insert on the Diver 300 meter. Also, you can see that the bezel pearl and the minute hand are green, so you can quickly read them relative to each other at a glance. And because this is inspired by the No Time to Die 007 edition, and he is a military officer, this is that military style full diving calibration where every single one of the 60 minutes is visible and luminescent. Also note the luminescent second sand. That's always great to have on a dive watch. I often say that what's the point of having a backup dive timer if you don't know for sure that it's running? There tends to be less light underwater. This gives you a little bit of comfort. The hands, the so-called skeleton hands, have long been nicknamed the Bond hands, not because of Daniel Craig, but because of Pierce Brosnan, who originally rocked this style in the 1990s. The dial features the Omega Wave that became famous on the first generation of the watch. It is back here, but you can see it's also back in no-date fashion. Taking a look at the indices, Pierce never had it this good. Applique indices, an upscale feature. And then, yes, there is a double camber to this domed plexi-like sapphire that produces a nice little off-axis distortion like a plexiglass. So, of course, this is a very enduring design. It used to be that the Seamasters were rebooted every couple of years, but from 1993, largely due to the James Bond exposure, this particular design took hold and it stuck. And it's really the first Seamaster design that through generations, not just of the design, but of the owners now, it hasn't changed all that much. It's evolved gradually, like the Rolex Submariner, rather than the complete clean sheet design that used to be executed on the Seamaster every 5 to 10 years before 1993. So this is a very enduring aesthetic. Now, the case band features a combination of polish and satin. We see these lyre-style lugs. They have both inward and outward bevels. Satin mid-case. You can see crown guard structure, screw-down crown, 300 meters, water-resistant. We do lose the date, but we get a balanced dial in return. It still has the hacking or stop seconds function. And then I must say, dive bezels are a lot of fun because they're easier to read than chronographs, and you don't have to pay the downstream maintenance cost of a chronograph. That's why I always prefer a diver to a chronograph. Taking a look at the backside here, 8806 is the 8800, but without a date. So, bidirectional automatic winding. You can see that the watch features a single mainspring barrel. This is the 55-hour power reserve, 35 joules. Master chronometer, meaning it is tested to COSC standards, but then beyond that, cased up and tested in 6 positions for chronometry as a fully assembled watch. It also undergoes durability, shock resistance, anti-magnetism, water resistance, winding efficiency, and power reserve tests for the right to be called a master chronometer. And the watch is anti-magnetic to over 15,000 Gauss, which is more than 1.5 Tesla, which is getting into the range that some MRIs operate at. What that means is we've got an anti-magnetic silicon hairspring, we've got a balance staff, and escapement that are all highly anti-magnetic. Now, it's a full balance bridge and a free-sprung balance, so it's also very shock tolerant. And though you can't see it well, there is a tri-level coaxial escapement, which trades the sliding friction of a Swiss lever for tangential friction, which reduces drag, improving the power reserve, reducing the maintenance requirements, and also improving the potential accuracy of the watch. This was designed by the great British watchmaker George Daniels and industrialized by Omega. The watch also has a quirky beat rate of 25,200 vibrations per hour. If you love this latest version of the Diver 300 meter, reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.